Hello, everyone. We have made it on a little bit late, traditional ADHD style, coming in about 25 minutes after the start time. So, we're going to be chatting about rejection sensitivity dysphoria today. And we are very sorry for keeping you waiting. Just had some technical difficulties, but fingers crossed, it all works from here on out. And this is Dan beside me. What do you want to talk about today, Dan, in this chat about RSD?
Yeah, thanks for joining, everyone, and thanks for your patience. Today, really excited to talk about rejection sensitive dysphoria, how it impacts people with ADHD, why it impacts people with ADHD, the emotional challenges that come up as part of ADHD, and what people with ADHD can do to receive support, mental and emotional support for things like rejection sensitivity.
So that sounds great to me. Can you define RSD in the context of ADHD? Just give people a bit of an insight about the link between it and what it might actually look like day to day.
Absolutely. So RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, really does impact people with ADHD for a few different reasons. The first is that it's actually a strong, high sensitivity to rejection that people with ADHD experience, not just to rejection when it actually occurs, but to the perception of rejection or the perception of criticism or feeling like a failure. That happens for a range of different reasons. People with ADHD have high emotional sensitivity or high levels of emotional dysregulation quite commonly. Also related to experiences in early life and all the way through life with certain struggles that people with ADHD experience. And we'll unpack that a little bit further. But it's really just this perception of rejection, sensitivity to that perception, or the actual experience of rejection, and then through that sensitivity, how it plays out throughout life, impacting a person's individual challenges that they experience in different areas of life, which prevents them from doing things that they want to do.
Okay, awesome. What do you think are some important questions that, like, maybe I can answer today about RSD, Dan? Like, what would you like to be asking me today?
Yeah, I'd like to ask you, what you see with clients in our work, what you see quite commonly around rejection sensitivity, how it impacts people, why it impacts people with ADHD more specifically than the sort of general population, and also looking at what types of treatment supports that people can seek to manage that perception of rejection.
Well, I guess there's two sides of it. There's the side where people will often avoid things that make them feel uncomfortable. So avoid going for that promotion, avoid going to that social gathering, avoid asking for help when they really need it, because they don't want to be perceived as someone who can't do it, or they don't want to be perceived as someone who isn't very good in social situations, whatever the thing is that they're avoiding. And then the other side of that is the person who will overcompensate for their perceived feelings of rejection. So they're trying to prove that they're worthy. They're trying to show everyone that they are good enough and they don't need anyone's help. And that's where they start to risk getting into that territory of burnout, like pushing themselves too far, not knowing when to stop and that kind of stuff. So they're the two sides of it, avoidance or the overcompensating. And what it might look like day to day in someone's life is like being really watchful, like watching people quite closely to see whether there's any sort of different subtle tones or facial expressions or body language. And then in their body, they'll experience an uncomfortable feeling, like a tightness in their chest, or they might have like a small startle response, or they might just feel uneasy around someone, but not fully get why they feel it. And if you unpack that, it's actually that they're a bit intimidated and they feel like they might be rejected, and they feel like they have to show up in some way that they're not actually sure what it is.
Yeah. It's really interesting, and absolutely do see that in a lot of the clients that we work with, and even in my own personal experience, the fear of rejection because of those earlier experiences of criticism, negative feedback, um, failing at something, or perhaps struggling to perform the way we like to in certain situations in earlier life, then having that impact, on a physiological level in the body. So, yeah, the shutting down or the avoidance, people, not trying, people getting, I guess, distracted from what they want to achieve as well. Part of it is the ADHD distraction or inattention. The other part is actually due to the fear of failure and that perception of rejection, people just not trying or giving up before getting started. So it has quite a heavy impact throughout life.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, I'll tell you a little bit of a story about my journey. So, like my school journey in primary school and high school, like I did the compensating route where I tried my hardest not to be good at things. Like in schooling, I would like be the disruptive one. I would be the one who was just checking out. So I did everything in my power to make sure I wasn't perceived as good at it. So I couldn't get rejected. Couldn't get rejected for trying and failing. It was just that I just was in that category of not doing enough, not good enough. And I was happy being in that, like not happy within myself, but like I felt comfortable in that. So I never had to risk being vulnerable or getting rejected because I was already doing it to myself. So my confidence was obviously pretty low at those times through school. But then when I left school and started to understand ADHD a lot more, started to work in the professional world, business owner, and helping lots of people, I went the other way. So like really trying to push myself to extreme lengths. So like trying to accomplish all the things that I could in a short amount of time because I felt like I missed out on all the opportunities when I was younger because I didn't understand myself enough. So later on in life now, I've got much more of a balance and I can kind of be a bit more level-headed. I don't have to try to achieve everything all at once. I can set realistic goals and stuff like that. But my own personal journey from compensating one way because of perceived rejection to compensating the other way, yeah, a bit of a roller coaster. But yeah, what about you, Dan? Like, tell me something about maybe some of your clients or yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's really relatable. My own personal experience in earlier life, there were certain challenges at school. I didn't pick up on things that quickly or that easily. It always took me extra time to learn things. I was always sort of staying back, finishing things off, or running late, running behind. Easily distracted, my attention would shift to the other side of the classroom the moment something else happened somewhere else. So it became easier to check out because I knew I had certain struggles. So it was almost easier to give up or sort of, subscribe to that belief that I'm failing and, everything's going to be harder. So what's the point in trying? And often then it'd be easier to become, a little bit of the class clown and really play up to the audience because that was fun and it was a way to gain some positive attention in the form of misbehaving, but it wasn't the kind of attention that I wanted. It wasn't until later in my own journey, my own life, that I became aware of my own mental health challenges and more recently ADHD diagnosis. Really understanding how that struggle in early life presents as rejection. It becomes really easy to check out as the only kind of option available at that point without the awareness. So as I grew in awareness, I'm able to really address those sort of checking out tendencies, subscribing to that belief of failure, and showing up and really giving things a go and understanding that it might take a little bit longer for me to, get it right, but eventually I will. And we find our own unique ways to tap into strengths and to succeed. Also measuring and limiting ourselves. And look, with a lot of the clients I work with, they've had these earlier life experiences of struggle, challenge, setback, and often having to then later in life overcompensate, trying to do all things and be all things to all areas of their lives, and then crashing and burning out. It's quite interesting just how impactful it is when people realize they do have some strengths and they can succeed, how it can really go the other way. Do you see that in your clients and experience?
Yep. Like the people who come in who have like known that they've had ADHD for a while, they've tapped into their strengths. Like they've quite often got like a couple of businesses on the go. They might be in a gym group. They might be a parent. They've just got all these things happening everywhere, and they come in seeming a bit frazzled because they want to do all these things. They love doing it, but they're probably just spreading themselves a bit too thin. I guess some of the things that might be good to start to talk about though today is strategies for managing rejection. Like if people with ADHD are always feeling that sense of rejection, how do they get out of it? And I guess I'd be interested to hear what you think about that, Dan. Then I guess I'll share some thoughts on that as well. But you can go first if you like.
Yeah, often when we see people that are struggling with rejection, they don't often see it as rejection. They just see it that they've ingrained this belief about themselves that everything's a struggle. They often fail and they need to find a way to be better. They often come in to say, I want to be better at this. My confidence is low. Or I'm trying to do all things, but I'm struggling because I can't manage my stress. So it's like these initial presentations that come out as, behavioral responses that they're looking to manage. Then underneath, there's this strong emotional pain when you really unpack it. So just teaching people how to be aware of, the underlying experience of rejection and how much emotional pain that carries. That's often the first step in working with people, the sort of piece around awareness and how important that is. And in your work, do you see a similar sort of pattern?
I guess raising the awareness thing of it, like I like to do a strategy which is just memory mapping. So if they're coming in and they're having these problems with not able to succeed in one area of their life or other area of their life, well, I start to get them to map out some of the past memories that feel similar to that. So there might be a theme around avoiding certain situations. Well, let's look at memories that might influence that avoidance behavior. So they're avoiding putting themselves out there in a work context. Well, has there ever been a time in your life where you've been rejected in a group setting, or has there been a time where at school where you did ask for help and you were rejected? So we start to map out these historical events that have a strong emotional charge left in them. So we're raising the awareness around, well, it's not a behavioural issue now. It's not that I don't want to do it. There's some sort of internal block. And understanding this and how much each one of those events holds the emotional charge can start to make us be able to have a different way forward once our brain has the ability to process that information that's left behind. So that's a good strategy to bring the awareness and those internal beliefs up to the surface.
Absolutely. Yeah. And mapping those memories, and often there's this key theme, I'm not good enough, and the real self-critical inner voice that people internalize negative thoughts and feelings about themselves. They're actually trying to run from those negative thoughts and feelings by trying to be more or do more, be more effective, or sometimes just shutting down because they can't do all these things. And it just ends up back to the same point of I'm a failure. And then you link that theme of I'm failing, I'm not good enough, I'm rejected, people don't see me favorably, through a whole range of experiences. When people are able to really conceptualize all these experiences, what it means for them, their own beliefs, and how it ties to very similar emotional experiences throughout life, it can really make sense for people. And when they make sense of it...
And you don't need to change like your belief from I'm not good enough to like I'm Superman. It doesn't need to be that extreme to be able to get real tangible changes in your life. Like if you've got a belief that's been there long enough, like I can't do academic study because I'm not good enough. And that just runs in the background like on autopilot. You're going to avoid doing academic study just because that feels too intimidating. There's this big idea that if I put myself in that environment, I will fail. I'm setting myself up for that inevitable failure. But if we start to unpack the past and look at the times where potentially you did fail there, and how does that feel now when we think about that, and we give that your brain the chance to process that. Once we process the past, we can actually start to create a new belief. And it doesn't have to be I'm Superman, like I said before. It can just be I can handle the the chance to do academic study. I can show up and ask for help. I can try my best, and if I can't get to where I need to, I can reach out and try different support. So it can always just be a subtle shift, and that subtle shift then gives the person the opportunity to try. And then through trying and actually getting some success on the board, you start a new feedback loop, which is a more positive one, and it starts to reinforce itself. And then you can gain momentum. But the tricky thing about gaining momentum when you have ADHD, you often gain momentum very quickly, and you start to succeed a lot because you're tapping into the strengths that have always been there, but you just haven't had access to it. And that's when the other problem comes in, and people have to learn to use the brake pedal and actually learn to slow down so they don't burn out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're saying, Shannon, is just healthy, like limitations and realistic ideas about ourselves. So it doesn't have to be from I'm a failure to I'm superhuman. I mean, sometimes we are superhuman, but as you said, if we don't have that brake pedal, we can easily burn out. But sometimes it's actually like I can measure myself. I can actually work productively and consistently, but I don't have to do all things to all areas of my life. I don't have to be good at all things. I can ask for help. Often this is a common thing. People are stuck because they don't ask for help. They don't know how to, because they've been taught that, if you can't be good at everything, then you are a failure or you're not good enough altogether. There's very black and white thinking. Like it's either I'm great at all things and then I can feel good about myself, or I'm good at some things, but I really struggle with others. So therefore I'm a total failure. So the balance between those things and being able to then move through the mental and emotional blockages in a realistic way. So I can ask for help. It's okay to notice my strengths and also acknowledge the things that I'm not as good at. And through all that awareness, I can actually move into, consistent productivity and measure my, stress and performance in that way.
Yeah, definitely. What other things would you like to talk about today, Dan? Like, what's on your mind about RSD? Like, I know we've had heaps and heaps of conversations about this topic, but yeah, what do you think would be good to talk about?
So many other areas that it affects. So when we look at early life experiences, we look at social groups as well. So it's not just about classroom and performance, but it's, feeling like we're so different to everybody else. People with ADHD, they have sensory processing challenges. The world around them can be very overwhelming because we're taking in so much information, and it's hard to filter that information out. So often with shifting attention, the difficulty taking lots of information, when we're around group settings and dynamics like that, it can be so exhausting and we need to check out or we struggle to keep up. Can you relate to that yourself?
It reminds me of the conversation we're actually having just the other day. Like if I was, when I was younger in my early 20s, like I was in an environment, whether it was a social gathering or a party or a busier event, I'd often find it was hard to stay engaged in the conversations, and I would check out. I didn't know why it was. I thought I was socially anxious. I thought I was just not good at that type of thing. But the more I learned about how my brain works and couldn't just filter all the information to be able to stay engaged in one part of the conversation, the more I got comfortable with it. But early on, I just like see myself sitting there at the table, trying to focus so hard on one conversation, but I'll just be getting more drained. And then the more drained I got, the more I started to feel like a bit like I was broken or something, like, oh, I was just not good enough. And people were picking up on how awkward I was or something like that. So I'd start to feel rejected by the group, and that would make me feel like I was checking out more and more on the outside. So yeah, it definitely does play out in social environments and stuff like that. And I'm much more aware of myself now, so I don't put myself in environments where there's just competing noise all around me. I'm more intentional with how I set up group meetings or how I go to networking events, and how I, even at family gatherings and stuff like that, I'll probably go to the one-on-one stuff or a group that actually has a bit of structure and stuff like that, so it's just not like all over the place.
Yep. Can also really relate to that. Group dynamics can be quite challenging. I often remember struggling to keep up with everything that was going on. And even if I was focusing on one conversation, there'd be lots of stuff going on around me. My attention would quickly shift back and forth. I'd lose my track, and then there's this feeling of anxiety, like, I'm not keeping up. I'm not actually able to focus on what's here in front of me. There's too much going on around me. And that does create a real challenge with feeling that sense of belonging. We really do feel like we don't belong at certain points because these environments aren't actually setting us up for success. So being able to choose the right environments, things that actually work for us, I think this sort of neuro-affirming, inclusive environments can really make a difference to our sense of belonging and actually help work through what we perceive as rejection or not fitting in, not being good enough.
Yeah, 100%. I think having a sense of belonging is huge. Like as humans, we want to be connected to people. We want to feel like people understand us and get us. We're not going to go to a meeting or to our workplace and feel on the outside. We want to feel like we're part of something. So yeah, having that connection and meeting people who are like-minded or are going through similar challenges is definitely a way to connect on a level that has a certain intimacy and understanding to it. So most definitely. I guess we are running well over time today, and we both do have to get into our meetings, and we're going to be going off and supporting people throughout the day. So we both work in a mental health practice, helping lots of people with ADHD and other sorts of challenges in their life. So we are going to have to get going in a moment, but we have a program coming up soon for people with ADHD, and we've got a couple of different things going on. So if you're interested in any of it, there is a link in the event, and we'll pop it in the comment section as well. So you can register your details and have a look through some of the emails that might come in. And yeah, it's a online program. One of them is for people with ADHD who want to understand themselves better and actually start to process some of the past and have a new path forward, something that's more aligned with who they want to be. And what are your thoughts on that, Dan? Is there anything you'd like to share about the work that we're going to be doing coming up soon?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're potentially looking at running it in a group dynamic because research shows, and through our own work, that people with ADHD operate better when they're doing it with others. They have the encouragement and support of like-minded peers who have gone through similar things, that there's a sense of relatability, that we're not alone in the world and that we're doing this together. So that collective empowerment and encouragement is really important. We're also excited to be launching this because it really does help people get unstuck from all the limitations that they've had in their lives to actually create a clearer pathway forward, moving towards their strengths and what they really want to achieve in life. So yeah, stay tuned. We want to gauge your interests about what type of offering would best suit your needs in terms of a group program, whether it be online, whether it be in person, logistically what works best. And also in addition to that, helping people move in the direction that they want in their lives so they can rewrite the script, create a new narrative and new feelings and beliefs about their lives. So, yeah.
Sounds pretty awesome to me. It's always great hanging out with people who are going through similar things and who want to make change in their life. So I guess this is an offering or a program, whatever you want to call it, that is for the people who do want to make meaningful change and who are ready to step up and have some of those challenges that they've been through sort of brought to the surface so they can work through them and actually get the lasting results that they want. So reach out, send us any feedback as well. We're really interested to hear your thoughts and have a chat. And we'll be jumping back on live soon, do you reckon, Dan, in the next few weeks and have another chat. But yeah, thanks again for understanding. We're a bit late and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. We look forward to jumping on again. And thank you very much for joining. It's been a pleasure chatting.